I'm as functional med, integrative, holistic, nutritional healing as it gets. And I still don't have all the results I want because we're actually putting good things into a dysfunctional gut-brain connection. So there's no way that we can count on the nervous system regulation to take that good stuff and do good things with it until we get the nervous system online first. Welcome to the Experience Miracles podcast, where we help parents find hope, answers, and drug-free help to overcome your child's chronic health challenges. I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, and I'll be sharing my experiences as both a dad and a doctor on every episode. I can take the latest science and neurology of healing and break it down in the most simple and relatable way possible. We'll take on the toughest topics and answer your biggest questions through interviews with other amazing parents and leading experts, leaving you with practical action steps that you can take to help your child heal and thrive. It's time to expect and experience miracles. Let's get started. All right, parents, welcome back to another episode of the Experience Miracles podcast. And if you thought we went nerdy and neurological and neuroscience-y on a few of the previous episodes where we're talking about autism and the vagus nerve and the perfect storm, and if you caught those, awesome. You know that we love to go science-y and we love to go nerdy and neurological, but you also know that you're going to get this conversation here today about the gut-brain connection, the microbiome, and so much of this really cool, intricate, sometimes it can seem complex and complicated information. Exactly not like that. We're going to make it wildly simple. And most importantly, once I can make it simple for you, parents, to understand this stuff, then you can use this stuff. Then you can take action with this information to get your kids healthy once again. So this podcast is going to tackle a very important conversation, a very important element of healing, if you will, to help heal your child from chronic illness, to keep them and help them overcome acute illnesses better. And once we put this all together, primarily with this podcast, we're blessed to reach so many families whose kids have, a big healing mountain to overcome. And we're going to help you do that. We're going to walk up and over and through that obstacle with you. But also, man, if you get this understanding about the nervous system, the vagus nerve, and now today, the microbiome and the gut-brain connection, if you get this stuff proactively, you're in a heck of a advantage as well with keeping your family healthy if you don't have to do the restoration and reparation job first. So anyways, this conversation today, microbiome, let's just hang on that word for a second. Holy land of the nerds, right? This conversation is one that I bet a lot of you parents are actually pretty familiar with. So like we talk about all the time here, we are blessed to be, presenting this podcast. I am blessed to be in practice. I am blessed to be a parent right in the beginning. And I think we're actually a couple of good paces into this massive cultural shift with this generation of parents for our children. That's who's pulling us. That's who's pushing us to make this shift and to make this dramatic leap from, totally pediatrician, pharmaceutical system, let's go there first, let's take medications first, to let's go there last. Let's work on our health from a natural and neurological perspective first. So there's this huge pendulum shift happening because it needs to, it has to. We have the sickest generation of kids ever, and things are trending in the wrong direction statistically with how many kids are sick and stressed and chronically ill. So we need to do this right now. We need to get ahead of this turn. And you can trust the Experience Miracles podcast, myself and this team, to help lead and guide and partner you on that. But when we do this, and I've been doing this for 15 years, what I do know is that our audience tends to be a different kind of parent. It tends to be a very intrigued parent, a very want-to-know parent, a very already informed, empowered, and ready to get more information and more tools in your toolkit to help your child heal naturally without drugs from big stuff, chronic stuff. And especially if that's your family, if your kiddo is struggling with seizures, if your kiddo is struggling with, autism and autoimmune challenges and anything and everything neurological, gastrointestinal, immunological, endocrine, you name it, this conversation's for you. And what I know is that this group, this cohort, whatever the right word is there, of parents, this is a conversation I'm going to go deep in. We're going to get real granular. We're going to get real deep. We're going to get real nerdy. And as always, we're going to keep it real simple and real actionable. But I know you love this stuff because we love our kids that much. So no matter whether you despised science and anatomy classes in high school and before, or whether you've got advanced degrees in them, you learn to fall in love with this stuff because you absolutely are, obvious statement coming here, just in an indescribable way, in love with your kids. And you want to see them be healthy, be happy, and be at their optimal potential. If that's you, and I know it is, this is a conversation. This is an episode I want you to listen all the way through, if not twice. Because when you learn about the gut-brain connection, and you learn about the microbiome, and you learn about the vagus nerve. So just a little bit ago, we did a whole deep dive on the vagus nerve, VAGUS, and the autonomic nervous system. And we said, hey, we're going to take the individual roles, the really important. So, if you've ever studied, how to do great, you're not supposed to multitask, right? Multitasking. Well, the vagus nerve is, I don't know how it didn't get this nickname. It should be called the great multitasker versus the wandering nerve. It's kind of the one and the same. So we went deep into that conversation, and then we said, okay, this episode's coming. Because what I know for a lot of families today is you actually have studied, you have Googled, you have read, you might have a functional nutritionist, functional med doctor, integrated med doctor. There's kind of a lot of awesome interchangeable terms to say, hey, you know about the gut and immune connection. You know about the gut and the brain connection. You know about the microbiome, and you want to know more. And here's my most important thing to open up and tell you you're going to learn on this episode. You're going to learn something different, vividly, significantly different about the brain-gut connection and the microbiome that is not covered and not taught on other podcasts, in other articles, or in other offices with natural, functional, integrative practitioners. The truth is, most families, when they learn about the microbiome, they learn it almost strictly from a nutritional, diet, detox, probiotic sort of conversation. We will have that conversation. You cannot talk about the gut and the microbiome and not very obviously get a quick understanding of how, in today's world, all of these foods full of preservatives and pesticides and just, frankenfoods, right? Just chemicals and made in a lab foods. Yeah, they get into the gut and they wreak havoc on the gut-brain connection, and the microbiome. You better believe gluten and the microbiome are not besties. You better believe that dairy and your child's gut are not homies. Don't believe the advertising, okay? So I should say primarily processed dairy, right? And so I could go there for the next 30 to 40 minutes and reteach you what you already know, that toxins and the gut aren't good. That when you put chemicals through ingested, so food injected, inhaled, so that they come through our environment or they come through medications or other sorts of things that rhyme with that when those get into the body, they create a toxic inflammatory cascade. That inflammation wreaks havoc on the lining, the gut. The mucosal secretion gets messed up. The function of the gut gets inflamed. The leaky gut sets into play. I'm very quickly, very simply going down that road for you in the first 10 minutes because there is awesomely thousands, if not tens of thousands of other amazing doctors, articles, blogs, and podcasts that can teach you about the nutritional component of having a healthy microbiome and gut-brain connection. But we actually named our podcast episode The Brain-Gut Connection. Did you get it? Because we're going to go nerdy and we're going to go deep into the microbiome, but we're going to take a different path. We're going to take a different road, and we're going to reveal a part of the microbiome, the number one thing that controls, organizes, modulates it, and keeps it healthy that not near enough people are talking about. So I bet most of you have sort of, kind of, a little bit heard about, or not at all. And it's, again, this podcast is different. It's one thing to hear about it, but now when we get to the end of this, we're going to say, okay, well, now I know this. What do I do about this? What's the action step we need to take? So let's go into the basics first. So let's review what the brain-gut connection is. So the most important thing about understanding the brain-gut connection, and most call it the gut-brain connection, I'm being choosy by saying brain-gut connection because that's actually the number one thing I have to teach you here on this episode. The brain, the central and autonomic nervous system, actually controls and coordinates the gut more so by a large margin than the gut goes back in the other direction and controls or coordinates brain function. Now, there is a ton of brain function and brain health that is dependent upon what the gut and the body are telling and sending back into the brain. So once again, let's just recap. So we don't want bad stuff going into the gut because bad stuff will get in there, tick it off, and send bad signals, send inflammation back to the brain. But what about probably, I'm just going to venture to say, about 80% of you listening to this? What if you've already gone after that? What if you've already cleaned up all the offending foods? What if you've run all the labs? What if you've taken out 477 foods from your child's diet? What if you're giving them 47 supplements and microbiome rebuilding, mucosal lining restructuring, digestive microbiome helping supplements? What if you've done all that? Your diet, your environment, clean as could be. No bad stuff's going into your child anymore. What if you've removed all the bad stuff, added all the good stuff with detoxification and supplementation, and your child's brain and nervous system are still struggling with sensory spectrum ADHD, anxiety, or epilepsy? What if your child's nervous system is still stressed and dysfunctional? What if maybe actually even their gut and their immune system are still off track? If that's you and you've been up late at night going, man, I almost said a swear word there because it's just such an emotional reality of, I didn't get any answers in traditional medicine. They didn't help me at all. In fact, they probably just gave you Miralax and antibiotics and steroids to destroy the gut and the microbiome further. So you got out of that and you got into natural, functional, integrative health, and you looked to restore and rebuild the gut and the microbiome to help your child's brain, nervous system, immune system, digestive system, all the things. You thought, the gut, I learned about it. It's it. That's the thing. That's the middleman. I got this. I get this. Everything's going to be great. And I bet you things are better, but maybe not all the way better. So that's this conversation, because the brain, specifically what's called the central, and really for this conversation to split the hairs, the autonomic nervous system through the vagus nerve. That's why it was important we released that episode. So if you get done with this one and you haven't heard that one yet, go back when you're done with this one and listen to that podcast episode all about the vagus nerve deep dive. But the brain and the central and autonomic nervous system really control the function, the motility, the absorption, the assimilation of the gut. So there's neurological pathways. The neurological pathway is the vagus nerve. So if we say brain-gut connection, gut-brain connection, guess what we're talking about? The vagus nerve. What that really then utilizes and is part of this mix in a major way is hormones and neurotransmitters. Primarily, the gut-brain connection is a parasympathetic connection. The vagus nerve is primarily a parasympathetic rest and digest nerve. That's why it has so much control over digestive function. And because it's a rest and digest nerve, and it's also in charge of regulation and relaxation, so even emotional and behavioral relaxation and regulation, this is a huge component of our production of serotonin, dopamine, and GABA. And I'm not going to break down each of these on this episode. We'll do a whole neuroendocrine episode coming down the road too. So today's gut and nervous system, microbiome and nervous system. We will do another one that is all endocrine, neurotransmitters, and nervous system. But just know by name, that's what they do. Transmit messages for the neuro system. Well, 90% of the body's serotonin, that key, absolute crucial neurotransmitter, is really produced and brought to life in the gut. But it's really, really dependent upon the brain-gut connection and the vagus nerve to stimulate the secretion, the production, and the absorption of serotonin. So you can have all the right building blocks nutritionally, but you need the right conductor neurologically. I want to say that one more time because it's so essential. You can have all the right things going in. You can remove and stop all the bad things from going into the gut as well. And you can be absolutely crushing it nutritionally. But we really now know that the nervous system, and specifically the vagus nerve, is the conductor, the orchestrator, and really the, project manager, if you will, of gut function, including production, absorption, and assimilation of serotonin, dopamine, and GABA. Now, what do those three nerd words mean real quick? Production, absorption, and assimilation. There is an electrical neurological communication system that tells the cells within the gut and the microbiome what to do, when to do it, and where to send it. So it's one thing to produce it, it's another thing to absorb it, and it's a whole other thing to send it to the right place and get it into the brain so that we can get that digestion, rest, relaxation, and regulation function. So just know that the vagus nerve and the nervous system and this neurological bidirectional pathway called the brain-gut connection is essential to even the chemistry conversation, if you will. Now, within this is the microbiome. We keep talking about that. Well, let's break that guy even down a little bit more. So the microbiome is home to trillions of bacteria. Yep. One of the biggest things. So what we think is, if I take the perfect storm, if somebody said, okay, you got 30 seconds or maybe even less to say, why are kids so sick? I'm actually going to rank it in this direction. And I actually don't even mean to rank them against each other, because it's the whole concept of the perfect storm is the accumulation or the totality of these bad things happening early and often in our kids' life. And really, it's just been an absolute societal structural shift so that in this way, number one, prenatal distress. We have now scared the ever-living heck out of moms about being pregnant, getting pregnant, going into labor and delivery. So instead of empowering them and supporting them and adjusting them and doing those things, we have diagnosed them almost with a medical condition. So there's a ton of research that shows this maternal distress, this prenatal distress, really affects a child's neurological wiring in utero with development. Second is birth trauma, birth intervention, forceps, vacuum, C-section, induction, breech presentation. These are serious issues that mess with the vagus nerve, because it comes from the neck, from the brainstem, goes down through the thorax into the gut, and we're physically damaging the vagus nerve via birth trauma. So we're disrupting the microbiome and the gut-brain connection physically from birth. And then the overuse of antibiotics and the overuse of Roundup and just, killers of life, basically. So chemicals and toxic influence. So what chance does the microbiome have today? We've made bacteria bad when by design, they're essential. I don't even want to call them good, moms and dads out there. Bacteria, healthy, trillions of them are essential to life. And the medical system went all out assault at them for the last 50, 60, 70 years. I'm just going to say this jokingly because it makes me feel better than continuing to get real in the truth. I mean, they despise bacteria so much, even when a child has a viral ear infection, they're like, ta-da, antibiotics, let's go in there and kill some more bacteria. Like and then, let's just blast every kid in preschool with a super soaker full of Purell and everything else. Let's take Domino's pizza, which is obviously really good for your microbiome. And instead of just having sausage or pepperoni, we know that kids like cheese pizza. So let's just put Purell on top of it. We'll sprinkle some antibiotics into the crust instead of, cheese stuffed crust. I'm just being over the top facetious on this, but come on. What a world we lived in where in order to sell medications, we had to sell the story that bacteria are bad. So now the previous generation, and I think we're the ones waking up to it and saying, oh, wow, being a germaphobe, that was terrible for us. Bacteria are essential to life. Almost, and I actually really mean this phrase I'm about to say too, almost as essential as neurological function and regulation. And I got to rank them that way, because the vagus nerve and the connection between the brain and body, the actual neurological connection, is even more essential than the bacteria. How many of them and which ones you have. And I'm not even trying to pit them against each other. We need both. I just want to make sure that you're not missing the most important thing, because everybody else talks about the microbiome awesomely through, hey, let's recolonize it, let's rebuild it, let's restore it. I almost went to my home base. Let's rebuild the microbiome. Let's restore the gut nutritionally. Well, who's going to help your child repair and restore the gut and the microbiome neurologically? We are. Hang with me to the end of this. We're getting there, and we're going to send you those action steps. Now, we're still going through the list of the job of the gut-brain connection and the microbiome. So immune system response and regulation of inflammation. So you might have heard this phrase before. Inflammation is the root of all disease. And it is very accurate, but also slightly incomplete. So inflammation often first stems from nervous system dysregulation, brain-gut interference. There's a term for that we say in subluxation. This is just a term you'll hear about all the time on this podcast because it's a new term that the world needs to know about, subluxation. Subluxation is a simple kind of $10 chiropractic word that means the nervous system communication between brain, body, so in this case, brain and gut and microbiome, and then nervous system, gut, and immune system. So we've been talking about kind of a two-way street. Well, we're about to add a third homie in here. We're going to talk about brain, gut, immune function. So neuro, gastro, immunological conversation. Say that 3 times fast. Neuro, gastro, immunological conversation. All right. This is now, boom, nerd hat on. Not really wearing a hat if you're watching on YouTube, but now we're really in it. So the immune system is the one that regulates and modulates inflammation. And so if you trace inflammation to autism, it's a huge part of the conversation. If you trace inflammation, obviously, to allergies and asthma and chronic illness, it's a huge part of the conversation. If you trace inflammation to gut issues on their own, huge problem. I could go on, right? So inflammation is the root of all disease, but what's the root of inflammation? Nervous system dysregulation. Inflammation the immune system doesn't operate on its own. The digestive system doesn't operate on its own, not even close. The digestive system, the GI system, and the immune system are completely, entirely under the regulation and control of the central autonomic nervous system and the vagus nerve. So we now know that vagus nerve stimulation shuts down and suppresses inflammation. Because when you turn on the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic system, the brake pedal, the rest, relaxation, regulation, and now we know anti-inflammatory side of the immune system and nervous system, you then shut down sympathetics. Sympathetic fight or flight is a pro-inflammatory state. Sympathetic fight or flight response and tone shuts down gut motility, shuts down mucus production, shuts down and damages the gut because it's conserving energy. So if your child is stuck in sensory spectrum, ADHD, anxiety, perfect storm, neurological conditions, they are sympathetic dominant, parasympathetic vagus nerve exhausted. And the first place that stressed, wound up protective nervous system is going to steal energy and function from is the gut. The next place that it's going to steal energy and production from is the motor system. We'll come back and do a whole conversation about gross motor, fine motor, and all of that. The next place after that it's going to steal energy, production, and health from is the immune system. When a child's central and autonomic nervous system is subluxated, sympathetic dominant, vagus nerve dysfunction, parasympathetic suppression, the gut is shut down, the immune system is pro-inflammatory and messed with, the motor system is a mess, the endocrine, hormones, serotonin, dopamine, GABA suppressed, noradrenaline, epinephrine, cortisol increased. We'll pause there to tell you that's a lot of science in a 1-minute rant, and it's all tied to one thing: stress, subluxation, and what's called, the catch-all term for all this is called dysautonomia or dysregulation of the nervous system. And we're not done yet. There's more functions of this brain-gut connection and the autonomic nervous system regulation of it. And it's what you could almost call that gut feeling, emotional dysregulation. And this is actually really easy to understand as well. The science behind this, again, medicine, far outdated on this, but everybody's known it forever. There's a lot of easy analogies. I could pick from 20 analogies to teach you about how much, our emotions are connected through our vagus nerve and nervous system regulation to the brain and to the gut, the brain and gut are connected in an emotional behavioral standpoint. But give your kid too much sugar. How's their energy? Give you too many margaritas. How's your decision making? How's your next morning, right? You could go on to really show how much this is affected. And also, if anybody has gut issues, nervous stomach is kind of like the easiest description of that. But we all know that those that say have IBS or Crohn's, we know that their gut issues, their intestinal inflammatory condition, again, so inflammation is part of the exchange. It's just not the whole exchange, but those conditions are made worse by stress. Why? Stress increases sympathetic dominance, which increases inflammation and shuts down digestive motility. Well, what if the nervous system is stuck on stress mode? How are you going to get the brain better? How are you going to improve your child's emotional regulation, behavioral decision-making, and cognitive capacity? Because what else does the brain do? Cognition, right? And those things with school and socialization and all that. And so again, I bet we're finding a lot of you families with this episode that you knew this. You knew the gut was connected to your child's behavior. You knew the gut was connected to your child's mood. You knew the gut was connected to your teenager's anxiety and depression. So you have awesomely, because you're an incredible freaking rock star parent, you have gone to town on healing the gut nutritionally. And the last big thing, and it technically, in the way real healing and neurological and neurophysiological restoration works, and this is our job to get this message to you, the last thing, which is kind of the first thing to get the foundation back online, is to actually heal the nervous system, to repair and restore function to the brain-gut connection and the vagus nerve. So what we really, really know is the gut is essential to every single component of health because the gut and the brain are connected. But if you're really picking up what we're putting down, the brain controls the gut first. So if we don't find out if subluxation, sympathetic dominance, vagus nerve dysfunction is at play for our kiddo, and for most kids, that's a serious issue. We have run scans and technology, so I'll get to there next. We can measure this, we can find this, we can actually, I could run a set of scans which tell us to what degree sympathetic dominance, dysautonomia, and subluxation are in a child's central and autonomic nervous system, and it'll not only quantify it for us, but it'll actually locate that stress. And especially with that second part of information, because the nervous system works a lot like a fuse box. The vagus nerve goes down and controls a ton of this gut and immune regulation, but there's also different what are called plexuses of nerves that branch to and from. Remember, the nervous system is a two-way street, especially this brain-gut connection conversation. So depending upon where subluxation sets up shop in what's called the neurospinal system, I could read a set of scans and tell you which kids have gut issues. I could read a set of scans and tell you which kids have excessive adrenal response, which eventually leads to adrenal burnout and insufficiency. I could read a set of scans and tell you which kids are more behavioral and raging bull and wound up and hyperactive, and which kids are more what we call drunken bull and disorganized and kind of the old school ADD. I could tell you which kids are constipated and don't have regular GI motility. When you learn how to read the function or dysfunction, especially its exact location of subluxation and neurological dysfunction, you can actually map it to physiological organ system dysfunction and therefore what we call symptomatology, or the expression of that condition, the expression of that organ malfunction and dysfunction. And so what we want you to know is that so often this information of which pieces and parts of this brain-gut connection are offline for your kiddo is essential to us to help hunt down their specific subluxation patterns and the location of their neurological dysfunction. So there's so much more we could talk about with the brain-gut connection and the microbiome. We could get further into mucosal lining and gut barrier and brain-gut connection in that way. But that is all dependent upon the vagus nerve and the function of the vagus nerve. So the number one thing I want to do is turn this in the other direction. So what if that is what's going on with your kiddo? What if it was a really stressful delivery? What if it was, let me go in the right order of the perfect storm. And if you haven't listened to that podcast episode, it's literally episode number 1 is where I map out in order the whole perfect storm. And then what we're doing is often going through individual components of it on our interviews or our deep dive solo episodes like this. But for so many cases, it begins with a lot of stress to get pregnant. So the preconception journey is filled with distress on mom's nervous system. So it's a stressful start. And anytime it's a stressful high-risk start, that's a stressful high-risk pregnancy, which is the second factor we find all the time in the perfect storm. Birth interventions, forceps, C-section, induction, breech, those things really wreak havoc on the neck, on the neurospinal system. So there is physical, neurobiomechanical subluxation creation that very much so, very, very much so creates this neurological dysfunction, dysautonomia, and gets in the way of the vagus nerve. And the first thing we find it wreaks havoc with is the gut. That's why a colicky baby can't sleep, can't calm, can't poop. So they go from colic and reflux and constipation and eczema and chronic ear infections, because those are all plumbing issues. So those are all neurological interference to internal function, motility, and drainage. Then they get antibiotics and it destroys the gut even further. And now the gut-brain connection is messed with. So the brain-gut connection is injured during birth trauma. And then the gut-brain connection is injured during antibiotics and food intolerances. So what's happening? Both. Which one is important? Both. But what if you fixed all the other ones, but didn't know about the subluxation, the neck, the nervous system, the birth trauma component until this one? The vagus nerve is the number one nerve damaged, injured, and created into this subluxation dysfunctional standpoint from birth trauma. And so what happens is you need to know about that, and then you need to know how to find that and see if that's the case. Because once we can stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system and the vagus nerve through what are called neurologically focused or neurotonal chiropractic adjustments, which are ridiculously safe, which are ridiculously gentle, and ridiculously neurologically potent. That's the way I like to say it. The number one thing that can access the central nervous system and the vagus nerve most directly, most potently, is literally going to its anatomical connection point, which is the spine and the neurospinal system. When you're working on primitive reflexes or big muscles through PT or fine muscles, little muscles through OT and speech, you are absolutely barking up the tree of the vagus nerve and the nervous system, but you're taking a secondary approach. And I actually qualify the gut as a tertiary approach. The gut is connected to the brain. So if you take good foods in and they can get to the brain to try and heal the brain and take inflammation down, well, they got to go through the gut to get to the brain. And here's the whole story. That would actually require the gut to be functioning optimally in the first place. And that's the answers you've been searching for, parents. Why isn't this working when I'm working the system, doing everything? I'm as functional med, integrative, holistic, nutritional healing as it gets. And I still don't have all the results I want because we're actually putting good things into a dysfunctional gut-brain connection. So there's no way that we can count on the nervous system regulation to take that good stuff and do good things with it until we get the nervous system online first. So the greatest thing about neurologically focused chiropractic is one thing has this whole multitude of benefits. Because when you work, people go, how can, it's almost too good to be true. I bet a lot of you, if you end up following us on Instagram or YouTube or something like that, comment in here if that feels like, wherever, if you catch this somewhere that you can comment, drop that in there, or maybe even a review of the podcast. I want to hear from you if you're like, oh man, this is one, exactly my kid's story. And two, if there's a little bit of this, like, it almost seems too good to be true. Here's why you might feel that way. Because medicine, traditional medicine, let's go there first, is super siloed, super segmented. Nobody works on the whole child anymore. And then even in the awesome, which we work with these amazing folks hand in hand. In fact, we just interviewed the best, I believe in pediatrics, the best in the world with Jessica and her team. In that world, functional integrative world, they're working on core vital systems. But even Jessica and her team would be the first to tell you, what is the boss system? What we really got to get online to get full, complete healing? Yeah, the vagus nerve, the brain-gut connection, and the central and autonomic nervous system. So they send kids to us left and right because they know when we do our work, get the nervous system back online and balanced, their work works 10 times better. Our PT, OT, speech, ABA teams refer to us left and right because they know when we can get the nervous system out of the perfect storm, out of sympathetic dominance, turn the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic back on, guess what? All the movement-based motor coordination things, which I'm going to do a whole month about gross motor and fine motor delays and motor milestones, developmental milestones, that works better. Therapy gets 10x better results when a child is getting neurologically focused chiropractic. Counseling, behavioral therapy, psychology, these sort of psychologists, so talk therapy, super essential for kids who are going through tough times. It's going to work better when the neurological pathways, the brain-gut connection, serotonin, dopamine, GABA have a chance to be around. So is there gut issues with the brain? Yes, but the brain and the nervous system are jammed first. Is there chemical imbalances with ADHD and anxiety? Is that theory true? Yeah, just incomplete. Those neurotransmitters transmit messages for the nervous system. So if the nervous system's imbalanced first, well, of course, dopamine, serotonin, and those things are going to be imbalanced. So do we attack the messenger or do we get to the source? We fix the source. So the coolest thing about all this conversation around brain-gut connection, microbiome, vagus nerve, subluxation, sympathetic dominance, dysautonomia is that's the answer to get it all the way better. I'll leave you with a story of this here, two stories that are actually pretty well connected now as they become best friends, but two of our intensive patients. So we have an intensive program in our practice where folks, actually we have some coming from other countries this year for 2 weeks. Some will stay a little bit longer than that. And it's always the toughest of stuff. It's usually kiddos with real special neurological challenges, locked into autism, locked into epilepsy, anxiety, depression. So Francesca and Cole are two kiddos. You can actually hear their podcast episode. Their interview is going to be coming out soon. Their story is actually on YouTube as well. And these two kiddos were in the thick of the storm for about 2 decades. Because I say kiddos, but they came one as a junior and in high school, and the other just getting done with high school with Cole. And they struggled with seizures, and they struggled with anxiety, and they struggled with depression, so much so that neither of them really wanted to continue to go on because life had been so miserable for so long. And so, especially in Cole's case, he had tried to not be here anymore a few times and needed 24/7 supervision and watch from his parents and his loved ones. Well, Cole and Francesca had a massively stressed out nervous system that shut down their gut. That wreaked havoc on their immune system. That completely destroyed their brain-gut-brain connection. So when we got to work with Cole and Francesca in week 1, guess what I was concerned with only? How you sleeping? Nervous system regulation, parasympathetic function. And how you pooping? Nervous system regulation, parasympathetic function. What a great conversation to have with teenage girls, right? They love it. And so the truth is, we don't worry about the brain being better. So seizures, anxiety, depression. So we would consider those almost, when I was about to say almost mistakenly, they are not only brain. You can't separate the brain from the body. Everything is connected. We're literally talking about the main super connection highway here today with the brain-gut connection, the autonomic nervous system, and the vagus nerve. So we needed to fix those things first for those kids, and we did. So our first neurologically focused adjustments for Cole and Francesca were working on what we might call basic physiological functions: sleep, digestion, immune response, and then again, I've alluded to it a little bit today. It deserves its own episode, did a whole series about motor function. And so posture and tension. Each of these kiddos were living with constant physical tension into their neck and shoulders, which is a whole lot more than a musculoskeletal problem. It's a neurological sign of severe dysautonomia, subluxation, sympathetic dominance. And so we needed to and did take care of and restore. When I say fix, I don't mean the cure. I mean, we make adjustments to restore functions to those components of the nervous system. And then when you get the basics back online, you have momentum, you have healing, you have a better brain-gut-brain connection. And guess what gets better next? The brain. So Cole and Francesca are both living not only anxiety and depression and constipation-free lives now, but they're actually even living seizure-free lives. They've been able to get off their medications entirely. And most importantly, this is the close of this episode, same as I'll close it with every single episode. Whenever I bring a story, what we call stories of hope into this, so testimonials isn't even a good enough word for it. These are these kids and these families' entire life. So this is called life transformation. And actually, when it comes to depressed teenagers, we're literally actually talking about saving lives with this. And I know that's bold. So there you have it. I know what God called us to, and it's this. Cole's my freaking homie, all right? And so the truth is, those kids, they're young adults. They now don't have the bad stuff. That's awesome. That's not what we're in this for. That's not what we created the Experience Miracles podcast for. That's not what we built www.pxdocs.com, where you can go read all the articles, learn more about nervous system focused chiropractic, and even find one close to you. We built it so that Cole and Francesca can get to the other side of the storm, to the other side of their struggle. Once your child's nervous system is operating at full connection and full function, they experience life full out, full expression of life. Cole is thriving. Francesca is driving. And I didn't even mean to rhyme there. I am not a part-time rapper. I'm going to stick to this neurological focused chiropractic thing. But when you have seizures, you can't get a driver's license. And when I met Francesca, I just knew. I knew we were going to get her better because her perfect storm case history matched her scans and her HRV, which is where we measure all this. We can actually measure and find dysfunction and interference to the gut-brain connection. You can learn all about the insight scans on the website as well. I knew we were going to get her better. I knew she was going to be driving. I knew she was going to be in college, which she is, and she's thriving. And Cole and Francesca met through our kind of intensive program and through their amazing moms, Janina and Nicole. And they are literally life savers. Those moms are that. You moms, you dads, you're the heroes. I'm a vehicle for information and adjustments and connection. Your child, hero. You, hero. Cole and Francesca, lives changed, and now they're changing more lives together because they get to live theirs full out. So the conclusion and the takeaway from this one, if you feel like you've tried it all nutritionally, if you've tried it all to restore, rebuild the gut and the microbiome, and you are crushing it in the land of supplementation, essential oil, purification, and detoxification, and the gut and the brain aren't back all the way online for your kiddo yet, then this episode is the one that for sure revealed what is missing. And it is a nervous system focused family pediatric chiropractor. So anything you need to get connected to them, it's on the website. You can learn more about it. You can go through it. You can find us on Instagram, reach out and send us a DM there. You can find us on Facebook. You can go to the website. You can contact us through that too. Whatever you need to get more information, we have it for you. Tons of articles on the website about the vagus nerve dysautonomia, tons of videos with displays. We actually show the scans on a lot of videos on YouTube. Go there, subscribe, hang out with us on YouTube, and then get connected to your nervous system focused PX doctor and get started. Have a consultation, get those scans, find out if this brain gut connection, this vagus nerve dysfunction, dysautonomia, and subluxation is the one thing, the foundational, true, real root cause thing that's been holding your child back from full and complete healing this whole time. If you found it, I love you. I am so grateful for you to be a part of this podcast. We're really building a community with this podcast. That's exactly how we want you to feel like you belong, like you are connected to this. So whatever you need, you reach out. The one thing we would love to ask at the conclusion of this is please share this. If this is changing your life, if this is getting you the answers you've been up late at night praying and scrolling and searching for, well, I've been up late at night praying and searching for ways to reach you and find you. And I've been up late at night knowing that just like my son Oliver, who was supposed to live a life full of seizures and delays and challenges neurologically, he had full transformative healing. I know your kid can too. And we're here to help you get that. God bless. Be well. We'll see you on the next one.